excellence practices in terms of raising the youth for the social, educational and cultural project will take place. The official ceremony of accepting the new members into the International Young Diplomat Association. I shall remind us again, the association was set up following the initiative of the Council of the Young Diplomats in 2017. So as you can note, it has its own history. So as of today, the structure has more than 150 participants. Now let's go over to the current political agenda. What we are seeing is the way the events in Ukraine are evolving, I should say, in the area of the public governance. I would have said it in the older days, but considering the fact that the statehood of Ukraine is really no longer there, so it's difficult to call it a statehood. Let's call it a certain political construct. We will definitely revisit it because I know that you have questions, but right now I would like to cover the dimensions that, so to speak, we traditionally touch upon in our briefings. First of all, I would like to talk about the attempts by the Kiev regime to suspend restrictions on striking deep into the Russian territory. As you know, the Kiev regime and its Western handlers continue to go crazy, trying to chase after exacting on us, as they have formulated, an infamous strategic defeat against a continuously worsening situation for the Ukrainian army at the front line. The Kiev regime is currently after promoting finally new formula of a plan. They have conscience enough to describe it as a plan of victory. If I were them, I would word it closer to reality, because this is a new disaster plan for them. They continue begging the West in order to suspend restrictions on striking our country with long-range weaponry. The Minister of Defense of Ukraine, Chinese diplomat on the topic of the cooperation. The representatives of the diplomatic organizations held a discussion about the peculiarities of the national HR training for then being hired into the foreign affairs authorities. Also, the members of the dialogue hold meetings with the heads of the Far Eastern regions from Sakhalin, Kamchatka, and naturally the city of Vladivostok. The agenda, or rather, the agenda includes also exchanging the excellence practices in terms of raising the youth for the social, educational and cultural project. And we already see the way the West is directly involved in the conflict in Ukraine, because the collective West is actually the main instigator of the military aggression by the Kiev regime, and more brazenly demonstrate its direct involvement as an interested party in it. Whereas some time ago we heard various assurances that their main purpose exceptionally is the support of the Kiev regime on the path towards democracy, and they support the Kiev regime exclusively in helping them to fight for their own independence and to ensure their own security. So currently the Western cause in their announcement has become so open that they demonstrate that they themselves have become a direct threat. The NATO General Secretary, Stoltenberg, speaking to the German media, which took place on August 31st, completely supported the Zelensky Kiev brazen venture campaign into Kursk, supporting the so-called Ukrainian president's statement, because that's the only way we can describe him. So he solidarized with the Ukrainian president's argument in creating in the Russian border area a certain buffer zone.
I don't quite understand what they mean by buffer zone. Probably the graveyard for the Ukrainians who will be killed in battle. But I can see brazen cynicism of citizens. Perhaps this is what they mean by the so-called buffer zone. The buffer zone which will be covered with the bodies of dead Ukrainians. What is this buffer zone they are talking about in the border districts? What are they talking about? You have to talk about it openly, and you have to follow the logic of this discussion. And so should Stoltenberg and the others. They should openly tell Ukrainians, the citizens of Ukraine, whom they actually have thrown into battle. Let them explain what they mean by this so-called buffer zone. By the way, there is a licit ground that has been created for the right of the so-called self-defense, which doesn't end at the border of the Ukraine. What about the right of Donbass and other Russian regions which are under strike of the Nazi Ukrainian regime? The rules do not apply to these regions. What's wrong with them? Is there something wrong with their knowledge of geography or their approach to the system? At the informal meeting of the EU ministers previously attended by Kulebov and attended by Kulebov this time, I cannot say what it was about. But in Brussels, Borrell mentioned that, and I would like to quote him. He talked about the strategic achievements of the Ukrainian regime, which were demonstrated in the attacks on Kursk. Well, these are the quotations from the Third Reich as it is. Take it or leave it. This is the way they were thanked for their attacks on the countries of the world. So this was what was quoted by the representatives of the Western countries and NATO countries when they were talking about the coups in different countries such as Afghanistan, which they left, by the way. So he also was mentioning the attacks on Russia and the central parts of Russia. Well, I must say that in accordance with the soon-to-leave guard of the so-called Garden of Eden, Borrell, he says that Europe should employ the armament to its full capacity in Russia and the Ukrainian war. Well, I'm not even mentioning about Blinken and others who motivated the Ukrainian regime, saying that they were fully answering the demands for the so-called beautiful future of the Ukraine. So where are the people now? Why are they calling people to rise? Why aren't they talking about the rights of the Ukrainian citizens? They're only talking about the so-called Western narrative, the Western narrative which poses its aim as a strategic attack on Russia. No other ideas. The crazy idea about terrorist attacks on Russia were supported by this rampage and orgy of ministers from Western countries and the Baltic states. They are trying to gain score before the Western countries to simply gain means and finance which is channeled to them by foreign countries and Western countries. You see, it has to be drawn to attention that they are losing ground, they are losing touch with reality, and the fact that the escalation of this conflict is becoming dangerous to themselves, not only Ukrainian citizens whom they have already discarded, but let them think about themselves at least. Well, we have to draw the line, and in case of such aggressive regime steps, Kiev regime steps, there will be a concrete and direct response from Russia. Now, as to the crimes of the Ukrainian regime, which is continuing to attack the peaceful population of Russia, and these are acts of terrorism, extremism. On the 28th of August in Zaporozhye Oblast, a drone was fired and a child died. 4 people were wounded. On the 25th of August, 25 drones attacked a hospital. On the 29th of August, one soldier of the Russian army talked about the shelling and firing against 12 children in the Kursk district. They were killed, fired in the back. Do you remember how the Western countries were laughing about the liberal ideas of the boy who was killed? True. How many children have already been killed and wounded? Little boys and little girls. Mercifully crucified. They were simply crucified. So those who were laughing before, don't they want to pay attention to that and see what it has all come to? The facts, tragedy that is unfolding before our eyes is the value of this pseudo-humanist demagogy and their attempts to provide for the development of the so-called democracy. Children are dying, but nobody cares about children in these Western countries. They are worried about the abstract children who were, as they claim, were stolen from Ukraine. Some abstract children who need to receive help, whose rights have to be protected, they have to receive humanitarian aid. As to the real live children who were crucified, they have been completely forgotten about. So, you know, this is like a fairy tale of Andersen. You remember the story about the nightingale, where the princess discarded the real roses and the real nightingale by saying, well, they are real and I don't need them. This is very much like the position of the Western countries who disregard the dramatic and the tragic stories connected with children. This is what the West is saying. They're saying we don't care about. The real facts, this is what is unfolding before our eyes. And there is information in mass media from the Banderites, who have been killing peaceful population. And, approximately 10 people were killed who wanted to leave Sudzhansky region and Sudzha. A pregnant woman was killed when she tried made a futile attempt to evacuate the city. So, has anyone changed their avatar? Has anyone given the world to know the photographs about the people who were murdered in cold blood? Maybe somebody lit a candle in the memory of those who perished. Maybe, or could somebody have given a specific color to some building or a picture of people who have suffered, really suffered? No, this has not been done. More and more Ukrainian prisoners representing the Ukrainian army point out that such horrific actions were carried out under the direction of the Ukrainian army, that this is a part of the program. Well, nobody doubts that. This was pointed out by Poroshenko in the olden days when he said that people with their violated and destructed future. This was the picture he was drawing. If you do not try to retain your identity, you will lose your identity. Well, actually, this was what Zelensky pointed out after after he became president, when he was standing on his knees and asking for forgiveness before the people who had been murdered under the Hitler regime, known that he would change things around. 5 people died from the drones produced by the Czech company Vampire. A lot of blocks of flats were destructed. The Russian politicians turned to the UN secretary in order to condemn these acts of violence. They will be persecuted in the end. The blood of Russian people is on the consciousness of the foreign Western regimes. And all this goes to prove that pumping the Banderites with arms should stop immediately. On 15 regions of Russia were attacked, and the anti-aircraft missile defense systems have been able to cross out these attacks on Russia. Thankfully, there were no victims, thanks to the efforts made by the Russian army. And now the most important point. Why are we now discussing these topics? Why are we talking about the 1st and the 2nd of December? Well, the 1st and the 2nd of December are the days that mark the beginning of the new school year. Children who go to school are becoming the victims of the Kiev regime, and this is an act of terrorism. It was mentioned in the North Caucasus that we are now dealing with the so-called fighters for democracy. They, in their time, attacked the schools in Beslan, and the theater in Dubrovka. You know, they didn't simply choose Dubrovka for some random reason. There was a particular reason for choosing this theater, because it was attended by families with children. On the 3rd of September, a church was attacked in Belgorod. Drones dropped explosives on the church. And parishioners and the clergy were wounded. A lot of people died. So I'd like to once again repeat that this is on the conscience of the Western regimes, and they will be persecuted and prosecuted. And now, let's go back to what we talk about continually, the Ukrainian Nazi who have been brought up on the previous history and a story of the Hitler Nazi. And the Lvov operation, the Red Army, has become the focal point of this regime. Well, a lot of people don't know the real history, but the 80th anniversary, which was supposed to be marked on the 29th of August, when the same Banderites, the representatives of the Ukrainian army, were getting ready to attack the nursery schools of the same particular region, you know, the region where 80 years ago, grandfathers of the current school children risked their lives for the future generations. And the population of Lvov at the time of the fascist army were meeting Russian soldiers with tears of happiness and gratitude in their eyes. And by the way, they were freed not only from Hitler, not only from fascists, but even from the collaborationists of Ukrainians on the side of fascists who were very brutal. Currently in Kursk, we see practically the same attitude of the Ukrainian Nazi towards the population of these regions, towards the peaceful population. On the 1st of September, 80 years was marked from the beginning of the Second World War. This is another reason to remember the fact that one needs to take into account, one needs to learn the lessons of history, the lessons of the Second World War. Now, crime is always followed by punishment. Now let's talk about punishment. On the 28th of August, by the decision of the Lefortovo court of Moscow, the Venezuelan, Colombian guerrillas, mercenaries were taken into custody. They were prosecuted, they were investigated, and under investigation it was proven that they were members of the Neo-Ukrainian battalion. And that day there was a decision of the court against Latvian mercenaries who were present on the territory of the Ukraine and represented Ukrainian army. And there was a lot of fake information information about the bloody are assigned to our military in Bucha, but there was no one who saw that happen in reality. And actually, practically every day, there are stories appearing on illegal participation of representatives of foreign mass media on the territories in the Kursk and the Belgorod regions, especially journalists without a Russian visa and journalist visa without any accreditation who shouldn't be there at all.
Yet another similar propaganda opus of such a violator, Thomas Match, was published on the 24th of August at the internet portal Daily Beast, in which he translates a false Ukrainian narrative stating that Russia allegedly abandoned the land and people, and it also quotes the militants which protect the idea of Belgorod, Bryansk, and Kursk being Ukrainian territories. I would like to say here and now that with all the monstrosity of what has been said, it's probably not a bad thing that such publications appear, because we immediately take decisions in these cases. Otherwise, it would be more difficult for us. We see who and who was where, and who he or she talked to. So, we are able to work on it. So the illegal presence of the media reporters in those territories is a criminally punishable offense. And the appearance of Nazi headhunters from the Ukrainian forces aggravates this crime. The West actually continues to provide the military equipment and weapons to the Ukrainian regime, to the Kiev regime, and keeps silent about the series of crimes committed against the sacred things for the West, like human rights or freedom of expression. For instance, in the West, you can hear nobody speak about Zelensky's new law on the destruction of the Ukrainian Orthodox Church, which is aimed, in fact, against the canonic orthodoxy. And this is the infringement on the rights of the people. It doesn't seem to be bothering anyone in the Western Europe, in Canada, or the United States, and these double standards, or the absence of those standards at all. The same can be said about the clergy in the West, for instance. The National Review actually noted that the repressive actions against the Ukrainian Orthodox Church will damage not only the image of Ukraine, but also will split the Ukrainian society. I can say that it will not happen in the future. The society in Ukraine is already split. It just has been fixed in the legislation of the country. The American Conservative magazine analyzed the facts and shows that the systematic violations of the right of the Orthodox pastor on the part of the Kiev authorities started back in 2018, not in 2022. Well, at least something. They started noticing that back in 2018. Then the mongering against the clergy of the Ukrainian Orthodox Church is underlined in this publication as well. And despite everything, Washington does not notice what is happening there. Okay, if Washington was not involved at all and could, well, in that case, it could say that it's well, they can do anything. They are for all the good against all the bad, you know, and it's up to the people to decide what they do. So there must be, you know, non-government institutions that should be engaged in the protection of these rights. But the White House, exactly the White House, is completely focused and professionally focused on this topic, you know, issuing certain reports issued by the government and government-financed institutions which are part of the government apparatus in the United States, which are designed to protect the religious rights and freedoms. And here we see, you know, an unprecedented situation which is out of the scope of their view. And that is happening despite of what the journalists say and the United Nations say. And the United Nations starts registering that too. We, on our side, also published a lot of materials that were pertaining to the attacks on the Ukrainian Orthodox Church and what was happening to the clergy there. And nothing out of that report was put to doubt. Because we had names, we had plaintiffs, we had all the specific facts. And there's arrogance on the part of Washington demonstrated towards the Kiev regime actually supports Zelensky regime in his doings. This Ukro-Nazi ideology actually speaks, well, says that the majority of the Ukrainian people are supporting the decisions made by Zelensky as regards the Ukrainian Orthodox Church. It's a dictatorship that we currently see in Ukraine. So, you know, the people, if they fail to obey to the Kiev regime, they risk being imprisoned. And although they know it exactly, and they know it for sure, they just come out into the streets and they try to protect the holy places and the holy ideas that they believe to be untouchable. So everything that is said by Zelensky and his regime about the Ukrainian Orthodox Church is an example of wishful thinking. You know, they are trying to say something that is not happening, because what has been done and is being done may lead to open hostilities. Not at the ideological level only, or level, if you please, but it may lead to a real civil, civil riots. Going over to the situation in Moldavia, we continue to follow the events in Moldavia, and Moldavia follows the prescribed by the anti-Russian course prescribed by the West. On the 31st of August, the Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Republic, Popshoy, the minister, actually said that Russia was sponsoring protests in Moldavia, and this actually is a cause for a laugh. It's a laughing stock. He actually said that the Russia is responsible for increasing the bills for household services by 500%. It's very, and the head of the Moldavian diplomacy actually tried to side with the whatever the Kiev regime is doing in the Kursk region. He actually said that they were providing security of who, do you think? In the past, it was the European Union. Now they are protecting Moldova as well. So, and according to Popshoy, they're very successful in doing that, especially in Kursk. From the point of view of the head of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Moldova, that's what's going on. And he decided to report that to the citizens of the country. And I think it's just absolutely insane, because they are living in this fantasy. On the backdrop of these irresponsible statements made by the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Moldova, we should pay attention to a new round of hostile propaganda published by Moldova and Ukraine, who actually call on getting rid of the Russian military presence in the region. Is it by pure chance that the Russian military are present there? Maybe Sandos regime or somebody in the Sandos regime will take the pain of rereading the history of their own country, and maybe they will come to remembering what happened a couple of decades ago in that country. And then again, I would like to warn from such adventures. Initiatives of the sort may be put forward only by the enemies of the Moldova state that would like to destruct it as soon as possible. I would like to remind you that there are more than 200 citizens residing in Pridnestrovia and Transnistria, and any infringement on their rights will be taken as an attack against the Russian Federation. So it's just a cheap sale of their own citizens and culture, because it's they actually rewrote their own language, the Moldavian language, into Romanian, and they are in the process of re-registering the Moldovan people into Romanian people. So one has to find some new words and wordings. I don't even remember if anything of the sort has happened in the history. And all too well examples of how a nation was placed at a step down, blamed for certain historical events, discriminated, but so that the whole nation would be. At the same time, the human rights are used as a banner, the people of certain ethnicity are blamed and changed. Even the ethnicity is changed, which is properly registered in the documents. When these gas transportation system network was given to the Bucharest control, there's a port that actually provides to Moldova the exit to the access to the sea. The energy, the electricity grid, for instance, is going to be transferred to Romania as well. That only means that all the ways available now are used by the regime to illegitimately transfer the country to some other jurisdiction, and which is in violation of the international law or any other legal principles. And that's when all the strategic assets are transferred to Romania, these Romanian citizens who are now ruling Moldova are trying to destroy the country. A few decades ago, the same thing, the same goal was to be achieved by different methods only. So they are going to decide the so-called the issue of the Russian Orthodox Church in Moldova. However, the overwhelming majority have protected the church, although before the election in 2020, the current president said that there will be no attacks against the Russian language, or the rights will be protected, and so on and so forth. So, you know, all these statements, although made by the president, should be looked at as statements that may be corrected and may be violated. In May 2023, Sandu actually called as she called it, the retranslator of the Russian propaganda. The Moldovan Orthodox Church was referred to as such. Maybe it's time for her to understand that Russia is actually protecting traditional values and promoting traditional values. Maybe something will click in her brain. Well, if she has anything there. Well, it's not the Moldovan Orthodox Church that translates the Russian Orthodox Church's values. It's Russia which is promoting the traditional values. So Moldova is sticking to the Center-Russian course. Moldovans wouldn't like to fall victim to somebody else's geopolitical game, which is aimed not against Russia, for instance, but against themselves. They would like to maintain the historical ties with our country, and this actually earns full respect. So speaking about the realities, there was a lot of questions based on the materials that were published by the German media or U.S. media, referring to German sources. As regards the terrorist attacks on pipelines, Nord Stream 1 and Nord Stream 2, over 2 years now since the terrorist attack, Russia has been openly speaking about the act of bombing terrorism, the necessity of carrying out an open investigation under the aegis of the United Nations and its Secretary General, but this proposal was blocked by the West, namely by the United States. And more than one time, Russia actually applied to the German authorities, asking them for an opportunity to participate in the investigation. And I would like to remind you that the prosecutor's office of Germany is carrying out an investigation, and we wanted them to share the information because their point of view, everything goes according to plan. However, no concrete results have been provided. I would like to remind you about the pace. When they wanted to blame Russia of something, they easily found some justifications and facts. You know, it took them 2 days or a couple of weeks, maybe. How many days have been they investigating? It's not days, it's 2 years already. And to a zero effect. You know, the investigation which was carried out in Poland, within the framework of this investigation, they tried to arrest one of the perpetrators. And Donald Tusk recently stated that, look, that's a quotation. Those who are concerned about the progress of investigation on the Nord Streams have to keep their mouths shut. How do you like that? I mean, maybe they should use NATO or the EU as an audience or first, and then create a list of investigations within these organizations that should be carried out in accordance with the internal law or international law, and another list of those investigations that should not be focused on and don't even require any attention at all. So they should create some kind of a table so that we understand which is which, whether there will be a fair trial, fair, or at least, those minute facts of investigation on the Nord Streams, for instance. Then it would all be understandable. They make statements which actually describe the picture, but we are trying to fish out and try to sieve the details from the mass media that we are receiving from the journalists who are engaged in these investigations, from bloggers who actually try to pick very small pieces in order to build this puzzle. But there are some officials in Germany who are responsible for responding to the questions. They actually arrange a number of round tables and conferences, and there's a lot of platforms, a lot of money has been spent. And, they provided a lot of platforms for the Russian opposition, the so-called Russian opposition, who are rather, paid horses or strike breakers. They could actually stop the... a very similar thing happened as regards the Skripal case. Over these last few years, somehow they had to, because they were overwhelmed with questions, and the actual investigators, British investigators from Scotland Yard, did not have anything to do with the intrigues that were arranged by the British special services, which were carrying out an alleged investigation.
The inefficiency, like I described it, is there for everybody to see, and it's impossible not to ask oneself the question, to what extent the mentioned by the German authorities there used to be questions visit this quote so as to try to understand what was meant by it. Only in this case, Finland, as was said by the Prime Minister of Finland, will be able to come back to observe its international obligations in compliance with the Russian-Finnish intergovernmental agreement on the cross-border points through the government border back in 1994, concluded in the Russian-Finnish agreement about the Russian-Finnish border and the process of the regulation of the incidents in 1964. As it seems, since November 2023 in Helsinki, the Helsinki authorities either demonstrate some lack of understanding about how to interpret and understand what the border relations should be, because the lack of understanding by the Finnish authorities what their ultimate goals should be, because possibly this is about the intentional provocations against Russia. Let me remind you how it all happened, because originally the Finnish side took a decision to close the border checkpoints. And that decision contradicts the concluding OECD Act, whereby they took an obligation to promote exchange between the cross-border dwellers. And so they brazenly stated that Russia intentionally acted to organize illegal migration flows towards Finland. After that, once they, I guess, decided to look for some sort of a legal cover, the Finnish authorities introduced changes into the immigration legislation in their country which enable the border police to expel those who come and ask for asylum, despite the fact that, according to the international law, their petitions should be considered in due time and in due process. So, as you see, democracy completely ends once someone is trying to gain some sort of a benefit. So ultimately now it is all being done to open the border, but as it turned out it was not enough, because currently the head of the Finnish cabinet of ministers can demand from the Russian border police a certain guarantees not to allow, but essentially the filtration of those who are on the Russian side on the legal basis for the people who wish to leave the Russian territory in any direction of their choice. Let me simply remind you that according to Part 2 of Article 27 of the Constitution of Russia, any person can freely travel outside of the territory of Russia. It is laughable that Finland is currently officially a member of the North Atlantic community of white swans who eschew the freedom of thought and pluralism, because they are continuously accusing us of having no freedom, no anything. So what one is to do about the fact that Finland, specifically in this case, violates all of the imaginable principles that provide for the freedom of movement and mobility for human beings. So this particular provision in our constitution specifically is based upon the international norm. Maybe Helsinki knows about it, but it's written into Part 2 of Article 13. Declaration of Human Rights in 1948 and Point 2 of Article 2 of the International Pact about the civil and political right dating back to 1966. You understand? The rights of the human beings, democracy and freedom must not remain exclusively a declarative principle. These should become an applied kind of principle. They need to be implemented, brought into practice. So with this in mind, one would like to remind sometime in the past friendly that concern the Finnish side, and you can read about it in the previous statements by the Minister of Foreign Affairs. But what we are stating is that Helsinki continues, apparently, to